All right, so today we are going to read a book called La Mariposa. And La Mariposa, mariposa means a butterfly in Spanish. And this week or today, we are going to really be focusing on inferencing and characters' feelings. Like, how can I infer from the text how the character is feeling about something? So, as I read that today, I want you focusing on that, and then we're going to do a mini lesson with that after we read some of the book today. All right. Early Monday morning, Francisco got up to get ready. Quickly, he pulled on his overalls, which he hated because he thought the suspenders made him look foolish. But he found the soft, bright flannel shirt Mama had just bought at the Goodwill store. Then he put on his favorite cap. Colanta en la clase, his older brother Roberto warned him, for he had been to school before and knew it was bad manners to wear a hat in class. Gracias, Francisco told him, taking it off. But after his breakfast and just before heading out, he decided to wear the cap. Papa always wore one, and how could Francisco feel dressed for first grade without it? He would remember to take it off in class. Adios, Mama, Francisco and Roberto called as they headed out to catch the school bus. Adios, hijos, she answered. Que Dios los bendiga. Papa had already left to thin lettuce, the only work he could find in late January. Mama stayed home to take care of little Jose and to set up their new home in Tent City. So first, let's make an inference, and we've talked about the setting before and how the setting would be important to the story. The setting right now is obviously in a place where they're not very wealthy. There's not a lot of money there. They live in a tent, and the only work his dad could get was thinning lettuce, means probably getting it out of the fields and things. And so the setting is letting me know that they're not in a good situation. They're not in a place where they have a lot of money. When the school bus arrived, Francisco took the window seat next to his brother so that he could watch the rows of lettuce and cauliflower go whizzing by. He thought the furrows looked like giant legs running aside. The bus kept stopping to pick up kids, and with each stop, the noise inside grew louder. Some kids were yelling at the top of their lungs. Francisco did not know what they were saying because he could only speak Spanish, and they were all speaking English. He was getting a headache. Roberto had his eyes closed and he was frowning. Francisco did not disturb him. He figured his brother was getting a headache too. When they got to school, Roberto walked Francisco to the principal's office. Mr. Sims, the principal, was a tall, red-headed man who listened patiently to Roberto. My little brother, Roberto said, using the little bit of English he knew, is in primer grado. Mr. Sims walked Francisco to the first grade classroom, and as soon as he saw the bright electric lights, shiny wood floor, and the warm heater in the corner, Francisco liked the room. It was not at all like his family's green army tent with its hard dirt floors. When I read that sentence, did it help you visualize maybe what that classroom looked like? Visualize maybe like a kid and a principal walking down a hallway at a school to a classroom. I really was able to imagine and use that imagery. Mr. Sims introduced Francisco to his teacher, Miss Scalpino, who smiled and repeated his name, Francisco. It was the only word Francisco understood the whole time she and the principal talked. They repeated it each time they glanced at him. After Mr. Sims left, she showed Francisco to his desk at the end of the row of desks closest to the window. There were no other kids in the room. Francisco sat at his desk and ran his hand over its wooden top. It was full of scratches and dark ink spots. He lifted the top, and inside were a box of crayons, a yellow ruler, and a thick pencil. Looking around the room, he saw under the window, right next to his desk, a caterpillar in a large jar. It was yellowish-green with black bands, and it moved very slowly without making any sounds. How do we think he's starting to feel about his new school? From the text and what's happening so far, how do you think he's feeling about his new school? I think maybe he's a little bit nervous, but I think he likes the atmosphere. Like he likes maybe the school. It said he ran his hands along the desk and the bright lights. He's found something that seems to make him pretty satisfied. I can't tell that he's not happy yet. Just as Francisco was about to reach into the jar, he gently touched the caterpillar. The bell rang. Kids lined up outside the classroom doorway and then walked in quietly and took their seats. Some of them looked at Francisco and giggled. They made him nervous. He turned his head away from them and looked at the caterpillar in the jar. He did this every time someone looked at him. Miss Scalpino started speaking to the class, and Francisco did not understand a word she said. The more she spoke, the more Francisco wanted to be at home. He tried to pay attention because he wanted to understand. But by the end of the day, he got very tired of hearing Miss Scalpino talk because the sounds still made no sense to him. He got a bad headache, and that night when he went to bed, he heard her voice in his head. Why do you think he was getting a headache? Why do you think his mind, he said he got a bad headache, and that night when he went to bed, he heard her voice in his head? Yeah, because he doesn't understand what's happening. So think about if you were somewhere and you didn't understand the language, or a sound just kept repeating that didn't have meaning. Like, it gets very hard, and your mind is working so hard to try to make sense of things that it's just like it makes you tired. For days, Francisco tried to listen, but he always went home with a bad headache until he learned a way out. When his head began to hurt from trying to understand, he let his mind wander. Sometimes he imagined himself flying out of the classroom and over the fields where Papa worked. So he's beginning to find a solution to his problem. "Hola, Papa," he would say, landing next to him. But Francisco was careful not to let the teacher catch him thinking about flying. He would look at the teacher and pretend he was listening. Papa had told him it was disrespectful not to pay attention, especially to grown-ups. When the teacher spoke the children's names, though, Francisco would listen. He liked their sound. Molly like mole in Spanish, and Pat sounded like pato. The one he learned first was Curtis, because Curtis was the biggest and most popular kid in the class. He was always chosen captain when the kids formed teams, and Francisco was the smallest kid in the class. And he did not know English, so he was chosen last. Francisco liked Arthur better. Arthur was one of the boys who knew a little Spanish, and during recess they would play on the swings, and Francisco would pretend to be a Mexican movie star like Jorge Negrete or Pedro Infante, riding a horse and singing the corridos he had heard on the car radio. He taught the songs to Arthur as they swung back and forth, going as high as they could. So he's starting to make a friend, so I can maybe infer that things are getting a little bit better for him. But if Miss Scalpino heard them speaking Spanish, she would say no with her whole body. Her head turned left and right 100 times a second, and her index finger moved from side to side as fast as a windshield wiper. Do you see that simile right there? They compared her finger going no, 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 like a windshield wiper. English, 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 she repeated. Arthur avoided Francisco whenever she was around. Why do you think the teacher scolded him? Scolded meaning like got on to him when he spoke Spanish. Why do you think she got onto him and didn't want him to do that? Yeah, I think it's because she really wants him to learn English, and she knows if he's speaking Spanish, like maybe she doesn't understand him, or maybe she is just really trying to encourage him to learn that English. So tomorrow, we're going to find out how the rest of his school days go.